Full disclosure, I spent money on this. Primary Arms 1-4 SFP rifle scope illuminated duplex dot. Why? Because it was so inexpensive. And you know what? I'll be the first to admit, I've been reviewing a lot of expensive stuff, either sent in to me or bought by me at a really ridiculously low price. And it's not fair to you, because what happens if you don't have the budget like that? Honestly, I don't even have the budget like that. I buy stuff based on, one, how I think it's going to be viewed by all of you, and two, on what kind of deal I can get. And I think that holds true to many people. Same thing goes for this. I paid like $120 for this thing from Primary Arms, and what that makes this is the least expensive LPVO I've ever gotten my hands on. Not only that, but it's a 1-4, and I actually kind of like that magnification range. I feel the scope has to do less work between 1 and 4 than it does during 1-6 or 1-8. And because of that, it might work better as a whole, as opposed to those other budget scopes, which are trying so hard to do so much. So this is officially the least expensive scope I've got my hands on. And would you look at that? It already comes with caps. Now, the last Primary Arms 1-6 that I reviewed, I didn't really care for too much. Maybe this will be different, especially for the price. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you too much about the specifics. The box is halfway decent. I don't know if this is an original box from PA or if this is one of their secondary boxes, because I did buy this through them on eBay, and I think it was either an open box return or something like that. Don't quote me, but it's a legitimate scope. That's about as simple as an instruction booklet as you can get. It's nothing specific towards this exact model, because none of that matches up to what this is. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. Because for $100 and some odd, what could you really expect? I'm genuinely excited about this though, because for the price, if this thing performs halfway decent, this could be a great budget entry into many people getting into LPVOs. And I'm a huge supporter of LPVOs for many reasons. I truly feel that these are some of the most versatile scopes ever made. Starting at the back, the diopter is extremely fine thread. Usually you don't see them this fine. Usually it's about 1.5 turns to 2 turns to get full in, full out. This thing feels like it just keeps on screwing and screwing and screwing, which is good because you'll be able to get that reticle really, really fine to your eye. There's also surprisingly little wiggle to this, almost none, I would say. Even when you back it out almost all the way, it doesn't really wiggle. And there's a good amount of resistance on there. So far, so good. Magnification range, 1-4, comes in at 180 degrees, which is 100% standard. And it is nice to see that even on something this inexpensive, it has a very little throw lever machined into it. If they can do this at this price point, there's no excuse for any other scope that doesn't have something like this already built in from factory. And you know what? The knurling on this, or I can't even really call this knurling, this is more splining, super aggressive splining, is really nice. You get a decent amount of purchase, and this is just enough that you can grab it with your thumb in either direction and turn it really, really quickly. So far, so good. And it actually feels pretty damn smooth. Good amount of resistance, maybe a little bit tight, but you know what? This will probably break in. Again, for this price, you're getting illumination. All right, so my other video got corrupted, so I'm going to continue where I left off, which is checking out the illumination knob. But first, we're going to see inside and see what the battery compartment looks like. No surprise here, this is the standard sort of spring setup that you find on most inexpensive optics of any sort of magnification. 3 little dimples in the middle, creates positive contact with the negative end of the battery. You have this rather large spring, which is held in by a C-clip right there, which you can remove and replace if you needed to. And there is an O-ring on the back for a little bit of weather sealing, which is nice. So that's back on. You have 11 brightness settings with no offs in between, and the detent is fine. A little bit of wiggle back and forth, but I'm not expecting perfection out of this scope. I'm expecting it to be just good enough. And for most people, including myself, most of the times, that's more than sufficient. It does require a fair amount of pressure to turn, so you don't have to worry about this thing accidentally getting bumped out of its position. And we're going to talk about the rest of that in a little bit. But from there, let's check out these turrets. Again, no surprise here. These aren't really that crazy. I hate these little styles of turrets that have just this little aluminum ring that you clock over to re-zero with that dimple right there. But you know what? For an LPVO like this, or any LPVO for that matter, in my opinion, you set it, you forget it, and as long as you don't take it off the gun to put it back on, you should never have to really worry about adjusting these. But anyway, let's have a listen. All things considered, that sounds and feels pretty good. A little easy to turn, a lot of wiggle, but again, this is to be expected. So every click is a ½ inch at 100 yards, so half MOA per click, and it's perfectly adequate. I actually do like how PA decided to add a little symmetry to the scope by making the windage cap the same size, roughly, as the illumination knob. While the illumination, and then elevation is lower profile. Gives it a little bit better look to it. Speaking of look, let's see what this thing looks like.
All right, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but here we are at 1x at 30 yards, and it actually looks pretty good. You see a lot of the scope body, but I'm willing to get past that as long as the 1x itself looks good and doesn't have much deformation, such as like fisheye and things like that. Zooming into 4x, and it still looks pretty damn good. Illumination going to 11, or its maximum setting, you can just pick it up. And you know what? That's better than a lot of other LPVOs I've seen lately. And for $120, this is really shaping up to be something special.
And that's going to be it for the unboxing right now. The full review on this is going to be coming out quite soon, and I'm very excited for it because I think that for the price, this is going to be it's going to be obtainable for a lot of people, but I think for the price, this thing is going to perform admirably. And I think it's going to be a great option for people that want to experience low-powered variable optics for the first time. Thank you very much for watching. See you again next time.
And a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you, this wouldn't be possible.